Good morning. A friend has recommended that my podcast be briefer and more frequent. I will try. Please let me know what you think. This morning I want to offer a few thoughts on aging. On aging, there is a period of life in which we are naturally more attractive than when we get older. As those externally attractive elements decline, even energy declines, many of the things which give power to life declines. Older people seek to retain these, even at the expense of their dignity, say involved in all sorts of body modification, and a lot of reaction to aging is to try to retain and appear to keep those things which were attractive in our prime years. Our good looks, our stamina, our force, our energetic confidence. This is actually working against the natural flow of things, and anything in contradiction to itself has a certain pathos to it, has a certain inappropriateness to it. We feel odd when we see a person who matches their age, who's happily their age, and not fighting against it, and looking good, and looking healthy, and looking fit, and keeping their youthfulness, not in an inappropriate way. This is a valuable thing. But to fight against, it's like fighting against the space. It's like going in the dead of winter, going out in your shorts. You're contrary to what the space dictates. The only thing we have in physical existence is time and space. So similarly, just as we would be contrary to what the space dictates, when we go against being ourselves, we become contrary to our age. We become contrary to what the time dictates. And it's just as odd. It's just as inconvenient. It's just as off base as the guy in shorts in Minneapolis at 3 degrees below. Maybe he or she's good at it, like they're in the Polar Bear Club or something like that. But apart from those people who can pull that off, they're just odd. They're out of place. They're acting inconsistently with sound assessment of their reality. Similarly, when we get older, to be temporarily incompatible with our circumstances is a shame. It's odd. It looks funny. And this is something that we should avoid. And so what do we do with those years that are in physical decline from our finest and most beautiful, and yet we have a lot of years left? Say if you're like after 40, 50 years old, say 50, people can look great at 50 and do, and hopefully we all do. But if we're honest, we're not as fine and as kind of brilliantly a draw as when we're 20, 21, 2, 3, 5, 25, 28 to 50. There's a difference there. But age-appropriate beauty is where real beauty lies. So, what's the cosmic design put in place? Why there are people with a fairly long time in life and moving away from the natural, easy versions of attractiveness that obtain in the earlier years? Here's what I believe is at least one important aspect or element of these things. A person who has lived to 50 years old and for the rest of their lives, 70, 80, 90, so long as we keep our mental capacities about us and our attentiveness to social behavior, we don't become odd and unpleasant to be around. As long as those two things are retained, and that's a personal responsibility, then these people, we elders, are more experienced and have greater knowledge of what's true, despite the constant nature of our environments and our relationships to persuade us otherwise. We pass through things that present themselves as true when they're fraudulent or artificial, and we do this all our lives, every day of our lives. And even without a high degree of consciousness, we are developing the capacity to assess and intuit and identify that which is true and wholesome and constructive and better for us. That cannot be substituted by anything other than experience. There's no pill. There's no Harvard, Stanford, or Yale. There's no being the smartest kid in the class. There's no being the fastest kid on the football field. There is only the constant and incessant challenge or burden of life in which narratives are being presented to us, and it is up to us to be able to develop the capacity to intuit and identify what is true and what is false. And that is human experience. And that is what elder people should want to pass down. Tragically, elder people want to retain the centrality of being highly influential, being the center of all things, being the boss, being the head of being the biggest thing at the party, and they substitute it with their youthful energy and attractiveness with being richer, with spending, with flamboyance, with all sorts of things, which is an artificial and unnecessary adaptation of replacing youthful attractiveness, trying to stay at the center of things. There's no need for a person to stay at the center of things in those youthful ways that are designed for youthful attractiveness. What elder and maturing people should really want to do in terms of staying relevant or staying at the center of things or remaining as a person of interest is to be able to offer those hard-won golden gems of what we know that can only be done by living through the years of our life. So, and here's the final thing I want to say. Most younger people are not oriented they're too distracted with their own passions and their own ambitions and their own sense of their own self-magnificence, or else burdened by their own burdens of getting through life and bills and things like that. Most young people, for either for good or for bad, or for out of naturally or out of being a nut or whatever, is not oriented toward elder people as a source or wellspring of benefit other than possibly usually their wealth, which also amasses over time. But those small handful of young people who understand that elder people have something that can only be gained with age, and that is the power to discern and what goes into good discernment. Those young people who are not distracted by only good looks and only high energy and only fascinating idiosyncrasies, but are able to recognize value at a deeper level, they will be able to inherit from elders and will have an enormous advantage in their lives. That's the secret. So the age-old teachings, all of which are tragically falling by the wayside. Respect your elders. These seem like old house on the prairie type of things. Respect your elders. This isn't only just some kind of rule where you get knocked on the knuckles with a ruler. It's not just a rule of church or something, respect your elders. It's to the benefit of the young person. The young person who has enough sense to know that that is what's needed to be able to see and hear something that will give you enormous advantage over your contemporaries. Those are the people who will remain the cornerstone, the golden thread, or the golden rails along which history unfolds. All right, those are my thoughts for today. Thanks a lot for listening.